spent about half of the 2020s hosting a podcast called Delayed Replay, recapping and reviewing movies that came out on time in my universe but got delayed in that other universe. And as such, the movies as they were in my universe came out differently. Some listeners not of this universe even think that this is an improvised comedy podcast. And hey, let them think what they want. It's entertaining either way, right? I'm Steven Shinder, and you're listening to Delayed Replay Season 6. Hashtag 6 seasons about movies. New episode every other Saturday. Unless I say otherwise. Hey everyone, just so you know, this does not have spoilers for the Wolfman movie that came out in early 2025 in that other universe. This is about the Ryan Gosling led one that came out last year for us here in the Delayed Replay universe. And it's a completely different story, basically, so no spoilers. Anyway, just so I'd clear that up, and without further delay, enjoy the show. Hello, listeners. Welcome to another episode of Delayed Replay, that podcast where we recap and review movies that got delayed in that other universe but came out on time in our universe. I'm your host, Steven Shinder, and joining me to talk about The Wolfman, which came out in October 2024 in our universe and starred Ryan Gosling. From what I understand, it's a different actor named Christopher Abbott in that other universe. But introductions are in order. So welcome back to the show, Starrapter. How's it going?
Oh, let's go. Wonderful. Great to be back on the show. It's always fun to be breaking down these fantastic movies and just enjoying reviewing them and just enjoying the entertainment that we often find ourselves, as I was talking about beforehand, just being kind of inundated before the record. We were talking inundated with all this wonderful content. So I'm looking forward to getting into this Wolfman movie.
Yeah, and I think this is like the second werewolf related thing I've had you on for the show, funny enough.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. So for starters, what are your experiences with like Universal monster movies, or I guess monster movies in general, like if any?
Yeah, I don't have a very large experience with a lot of these movies. I mean, I was born in the 90s. It does not obviously matter what generation you're from. We have full access to things as early as the 30s and the 40s that were made. But I mean, things like the Underworld series with Kate Beckinsale, like these different things. I've never really delved too much of them. Even I've seen like more clips online of things like what is it, the American Werewolf in London or something like that, like the infamous transformation scene of him turning into. But yeah, I wish I could say I have more background on this kind of thing, and I do like horror. It's not like I'm squeamish or anything like that, but it's just a genre that is kind of these monster movies kind of gotten away from me. I mean, I watched The Invisible Man. I think that came out in like the early 2000s, and The Mummy with Brendan Fraser is just one of my favorites. So in a way, there are little things like that I've seen along the way. But the Hammer horror movies, which are that have a lot of Star Wars actors in them, like Grand Moff Tarkin and Dooku themselves, actors. Never got a chance to really watch them. Maybe this October I'll make a better point to watch more of these. But yeah, that's about it on my end. I more or less know this stuff through osmosis of friends and social media at this point.
Yeah, back in high school, I went through a good chunk of the older black and white Universal monster movies, and
Ooh.
also like the some of the Hammer horror stuff with Christopher Lee and Peter Cushing. But
Yep.
these last few years or several years or whatever, they've been kind of trying to reinvent or modernize the Universal monsters, which
Yes. I
which is interesting in some cases, and in maybe a couple cases could have been better. So we'll see where we land on
Yeah, I
this.
was really hoping that the Tom Cruise like Mummy movie that would start off that franchise would be something that would still be happening to this day, because I think there is potential to make a cinematic universe. And at that time, it was like, all right, everything's going to be a cinematic universe, but like they had that famous shot of like all these high end, A-list actors sitting in this shot of, oh, this person is going to play this person, and they Universal had it all lined up, and it's a shame that things just kind of fell through the cracks.
Yeah, I still need to see that 2017 Mummy movie or whenever it
Yeah.
was, like j even just out of curiosity. But yeah, I don't know. Maybe there's like some other universe where that whole thing took off. But um, yeah, I don't know that everything needs to necessarily be a cinematic universe, but it does kind of remind me of how like in the 2000s there was the League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, which was with like the literary figures like Tom Sawyer and uh, Mina Harker, who fought Dracula, and like Alan Quartermain, and it was based on an Alan Moore comic book. And then a year after that, I think from a different studio was Van Helsing with Hugh
Yeah.
Jackman, and like I have a friend who really likes it. I don't think it's that good, but it did try that thing of like trying to do this monster mashup type thing where you have like Jekyll slash Hyde. He's in both of these movies, but they're separate universes, separate companies and whatever. You also have Frankenstein's monster. So they've definitely, and I mean, going way back to like Frankenstein meets the Wolfman, I mean, that's kind of the forerunner of all these things. It was here long before like Alien versus
Hmm.
Predator, Freddy versus Jason, and we kind of don't think about it as much, but like the cinematic universe model is definitely a different beast where it's not just this character versus that character. They try to make it a bit more complex, I guess you could say.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, we're on the precipice now too of having Guillermo del Toro's Frankenstein, which I'm looking forward to. Is something, you know, because that's he's gone record saying, hey, look, like this is something that we are really trying to focus on practical effects, bring it back to the things that inspired me. So not a lot of CGI, really nice built sets, really good actors. So that would be on my forefront of my mind after watching this movie. Is like, oh, that's coming out soon. I'm looking forward to that on Netflix.
Yeah, and I think it has like a limited theatrical
Oh,
release coming as well. Yeah, Frankenstein, like I read the novel in high school and I loved it. So I'm curious to see what Del Toro does with this. But I also love like reinvented versions. Like I loved Lisa Frankenstein. I thought that was a fun 80s like horror comedy flick, and it had a lot going for it. So like there's a lot of experimenting people can do with these things, even especially if they're like in public domain in some cases, you know.
yeah. There you go.
But yeah,
uh,
so in our universe, this Wolfman movie was directed by Derek Sion France, who I'm not sure if I've seen any of his other stuff. So yeah, he's done like Blue Valentine, The Place Beyond the Pines. That sounds kind of familiar. The Light Between Oceans, Roofman. Um,
hmm.
oh, apparently he did an HBO miniseries called I Know This Much Is True. But yeah, so we get this opening that takes place. It shows us we get the title card. It's like Scotland. Um, what you think of this opening scene and how it tries to set the tone?
Yeah, it's good seeing Scotland, first of all, as a major filming location in recent years. I've been seeing it really pop up a lot, and I'm proud of it. I've never been to Scotland, but I do have some Scottish roots in me if I date my DNA all the way back generations and generations. So but Andor, we've seen them using like rolling green hills, a couple other things I've recently seen. And it does provide, especially with the fog, as we see it in this movie, that rolling dense fog. It's kind of creepy. You think of that primordial kind of sense of horror, where like, okay, this is really natural, very in this environment. And I think it set it up really well because when I think of horror, I think of obviously the ambiance and environmental storytelling. I look back at a lot of things. I've been watching a lot of vampire interview with vampires, stuff like that, like where you get this even Sinners as a movie, like you get this like very creepy that bayou like deep south has that environment invokes for me personally like there's already a sense of horror there even before I see characters. It's just that sense of that place and that location. I felt the same way about like the Scottish highlands here with that fog, and it's just that quietness. It's like what is beyond the fog, what is happening out there in this big open environment. So I was already gripped. I didn't even see a character yet, and I was like, okay, this has already got me, you know?
Yeah, and I actually took a trip through the Scotland Highlands 8 years ago, so
Oh,
this kind of got me nostalgic before it got scary. So we see like this group of hikers, they're trying to explore the highlands and they're complaining about it being really foggy and stuff. And you think that they're gonna be like the main characters that we follow, but then night falls and we hear like a growl from afar. And what'd you think of their reactions of how they were trying to handle this situation?
yeah, they're like, it's that typical like cheesy kind of like it reminded me like the 90s a little bit where you have these characters that are kind of dumb, honestly. They're just like, oh, it's just a wolf. Don't worry about it, guys. Like it sounds far enough away. No big deal. They're supposed to be here all the time. As long as we are, as long as we're making noise, we're loud, they won't come near us, just keep on walking, keep on walking. So, it was that thing. But just like any good horror movie, what really works for me personally is when you don't really see, especially in the beginning of these kind of movies or these series, you don't see the attack actually happen. You don't actually see the face of whatever creature might be lurking in the shadows. So you see these kids like they're talking, you hear a scream, that scream gets muffled. It's like and the fog. So you see like a character get pulled, you see like a hand, like a clawed hand, like pulling, and you see a close up on like somebody's leg as they're walking that gets pulled. Then the camera cuts to like somebody's like upper torso. You see the claw grab their shoulder, pulling back into the fog. And it goes through like all five of these kids walking. We're actually, we find out that they actually are coworkers, and they traveled there all the way from Horsham, Pennsylvania. It's like a team building exercise. They're like, okay, we're gonna go to the Scottish Highlands, have a little bit of bonding. We'll end up in London. Well, unfortunately, they never end up in London because, as I say, they're getting pulled one by one, and then the last person gets pulled into the shadows of the fog, and then all you see that's left is the water bottle just like collapses to the ground, makes like a little tinny noise, and then we get the credits that roll, and it's like, oh dang, this is gonna be good, right? Like we just see again, we don't see the creature, we see bits and pieces, like maybe it's paw, its foot, its hand. We don't know the size, we don't know the shape. We hear its guttural roar at the end when the title credits go, that wolf howling, and we know we're locked in. We know we're locked in. So yeah, overall I thought that was a good 5 minute introduction to the feeling, to what we're about to experience through the rest of this feature film here.
Yeah, and I kind of liked how after that whole sequence, we get like this loud sound as the Wolfman movie logo crashes onto the screen against the darkness, and just really trying to throw you into the whole thing. So I thought that was pretty cool. And then we see like the this overhead shot of San Francisco, like we see the Golden Gate Bridge and stuff, and then it says San Francisco present day,
Hmm.
which was kind of a strange choice because they didn't even like show what year it was during that opening scene in
Yeah.
Scotland. So it's like, how long ago was that? Was that a few weeks ago? Was it a couple years ago? Like when was that?
Yeah, and I mean, I guess you could kind of make the connection to the clothing that the five coworkers were wearing because I said it gave off a 90s vibe. Just with the way they were interact like a B-level movie in 90s, like dialogue, kind of cheesy dialogue. Like, come on, dude, let's go this way. Like they were just being idiots and all this. But like you could tell like they're wearing like the 90s fashion, like the real baggy jeans, flannel shirts, stuff like that. Even the water bottle looked like it was something from like 30 years ago at this point. So I would assume it was the 90s, but I thought it was a questionable choice, like you said. Like, all right, why not just say it was 30 years later or something like that? But okay.
Yeah. So then we see Ryan Gosling, drive up to the driveway. He plays Blake, who is a writer, and he has a wife named Charlotte, and they also have a daughter named Ginger. Yeah, young kid. So we see a bit of his family life and how
Hmm.
he's kind of struggling with, he's trying to figure out what his book should be about. It's one of those movies where it's like a horror movie and you have someone who's like trying to like write something kind of like a Stephen King story, I guess you could say, which
Hmm.
I sometimes wonder if those stories are like somewhat reflective of Stephen King maybe having writer's block sometimes. But yeah, what'd you think of how they depicted the family life here?
Yeah, I thought it was great. I thought going from the relationship of like the coworkers side of things and then jumping into a more personal story with, okay, we are now invested. We have this family dynamic that is playing very nicely between the characters, and instantly you're like, oh man, like hopefully none of these characters get killed by however this Wolfman ends up in San Francisco, as it's inevitable that some strife is gonna happen. That's what movies are about in this case. Um, but yeah, I mean, as somebody like yourself that is a writer, I first of all want to ask like how was it that you think they depicted the character of Blake as a writer in general? Does that feel like it's a realistic rendition of like a day to day for you? I know you're constantly working on stuff. Does that feel like they did a good job of depicting that?
In some ways, yeah, it kind of feels like he has these duties that sort of take his focus, like he's trying to take his daughter to all these like school activities, like this play that she's in, and he's also, trying to maintain his love life with his wife. They go out to dinner and stuff, and you know that he's enjoying these things, but in between, he's like, man, I really got to get this done. But where it sort of differs from me, though, is that the book he's writing is not a novel, but I guess a sort of research project. He's like, you kind of wonder if he's writing about wolves or something, but it turns out he's like doing research about the Loch Ness monster and the people who claim to have seen sightings about it. And at some point, he sort of asks himself, like, how do I write a book about this that hasn't been done the same way as other books on the subject, And you see he has like this whiteboard full of notes. And he's got like another thing with like the red strings and cut up newspapers or
Oh yeah.
whatever. So in a way, it kind of felt like I don't know. In some ways, it kind of felt like they were trying to do throwbacks with some of the stuff we kind of know, if that makes sense.
Yeah, there's some familiarity there, definitely. but yeah, it's good to know that that profession. Yeah, because a lot of these great movies I've been watching lately have these writers, and it's a good way to kind of channel some inner turmoil with the balance of things. It definitely is the balance is the key word. I said, trying to work on this stuff, trying to have the family life and everything in order there. It's just like, hey, we all have to work. This is just a different kind of way of doing it. But I've as far as so we get to see that. So we're getting that picture of the family life, nothing in danger yet. But then we get to the next scene, and this is kind of like our introduction of like cementing that the Wolfman is now in San Francisco because we have this griddle cook. Of course, it's like that ambiance, right? He's working like the third shift. There's this place open, it's on this busy street in an area where there's a lot of traffic. There's a lot of like clubs and stuff like that. It's in that general area. So, a lot of drunk people showing up, and this person's going on a break. Um, going out the back door. Obviously, it's kind of a typical night in San Francisco where it's a little chilly and you get that fog, and then there's a sewer drain, and it's like, okay, the creature's got to be in there. What's going on here? And yeah, sure enough, there wasn't. It was pretty predictable. Like the guy's just taking a smoke break, and the wolf man. Again, we don't see him again. All we hear is a scream, and we get the perspective of the wolfman, a good look at the wolfman's hand, like grabbing this guy's ankle and just like pulling him down. And you poor guy, you just hear this blood curdling scream, and then the grate goes right back over, and then it muffles out the sound. It's silence, and then you get this like one. There is some comedy in here because the one drunk guy is like, "What's taking so long on my pancakes, man?" And it's just like it cuts back to Blake and the family, but it's like, oh man, we are now dealing with this creature in San Francisco. Again, as more of an aficionado with the horror genre, do we have a lot of horror movies in set in San Francisco generally?
Not that I can think of. Like, I don't know, maybe I feel like maybe there might have been like a Godzilla movie or MonsterVerse movie or something that might have been around there, but I don't know if I'm just confusing it with a different city or what. Um, but yeah, these are very interesting choices here. Um, and something I forgot to mention off the top is I think the first Universal monster movie I ever watched was technically Alvin and the Chipmunks Meet the Wolfman. The
Oh
songs
my
in
God.
that were kind of catchy, I gotta admit. Um, and there's also one where they met Frankenstein. But anyway, so we got um eventually get like this intersection of these two worlds when Blake, goes to this a griddle place, and he sits down with uh the guy who's there, and he has like a Scottish accent. So like they're talking a bit, and the Scottish guy is like, I actually have seen the Loch Ness monster, and so as he's listening to him talk about it, he thinks to himself, maybe this is a different angle that I can add to my book. I could talk to this guy, see what he says about, his supposed Loch Ness monster sighting, and then maybe I could like comment on it in my book. And so we we then begin like this series of interviews. So it very much is like interview with not a vampire, but something else, I guess.
Yeah, 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 yeah. So it's because that's where we're trying to get. The story is going in the direction of, all right, we're building up this lore of already Scotland having this idea of like mystical creatures, these different fantastical creatures. It's like, and we start making connections. Like, is there a reason why these different creatures exist over there. I mean, generally in our history, um, dragons and stuff, right? Like they came from the ideas of them came from, I'm pretty sure, like England and stuff. Like you look at the Wales flag and there's a dragon on the Wales flag. Like there's a long history with that sort of thing. So it's like, okay.
And I mean,
So
even
that
in China, you got like dragon mythology. So it's like weirdly something that different cultures have had for like a real long time.
yeah, yeah. So this guy starts talking about the Loch Ness monster, and then he starts talking about other things that also he had maybe experienced. And then that's when he interjects and he makes an aside, goes, "Oh yeah, there's these five American kids 30 years ago. We still haven't found their bodies yet. Like they just went away on a work trip and they just mysteriously disappeared. All we found was this water bottle. We have no trace, nothing was left." And that kind of sparks Blake's mind. Like, okay, maybe that's something I could start investigating, I could start figuring out. So it's one thing leads to another. So I enjoyed how it felt pretty organic that he was able to come to the conclusion, and that's when this story starts interlinking with, all right, these were completely separate stories up until now, and little does he know it that that creature that was responsible is literally in the same city. So okay, things are, the first act is really getting that background information, and then we go into to act two where we start to see, a little bit more forward momentum, a little bit more action. I did enjoy um getting a little bit more out of the wife, out of the daughter there, just again being part of the central character Blake's story, as a support role, but still able to provide, a little bit more to the story with the way their conversations were going. He was getting a little stressed out because he had that writer's block, and then now he's able to get by it. Now he's able to investigate a little bit more. So the way that the story turned was, at one point it was a little bit slower, but as we get into act two, things start to pick up a little bit at least.
Yeah, and if it were me at this point, I probably would have ghosted the guy like after he mentions like the five murdered or the five bodies that were never found because I'm like that's kind of sus. But yeah, when he talks to Charlotte about how like, hey, you know what, we should take a family trip to Scotland, and she's like sort of pushing back because like they would have to dip into their savings, and he does like this monologue about how, or the speech rather about how he loves having this family, but he wants to have something that feels selfishly for him. Like he says it more eloquently than how it would sound if you're just summarizing it. Like in the moment, like Ryan Gosling's acting was really convincing, and how it's like this book is something he's really passionate about. And so, they talk it out for a bit, but ultimately she decides that, you know what, maybe this trip would be good for all of us. And you do have like, the daughter at one point uh is kind of worried that they might be fighting, but they like reassure her that like everything is fine. And so it's that calm before the storm, I guess you could say.
Oh yeah, yeah, no, it definitely adds, and the whole thing is, okay, you have such an A-lister like Ryan Gosling, who's in this kind of like random horror movie. It's like, okay, what does he see in a script, right? Like he's a big deal. Like he's an executive producer on most of the stuff he's in these days because his star power is so well known that he's not going to diminish his reputation as an actor by signing on to some garbage script or something, right? Like so the idea that he's already in this movie, I'm like, okay, that adds a little bit of credence. Like, okay, this could actually be something special. So what do we got here? So I appreciated that. Like, he definitely has those more dramatic moments that you tip, like with the relationship with him and his family that you typically maybe wouldn't see as much of out of a typical horror movie. Usually, a lot of these horror movies, it's just like you go through people left and right because they're alive for like one or two scenes and they get killed off. So you don't have a lot of time to spend with them. Whereas in this one, this takes more of a different approach, but it's interesting because it's like, okay, you have this wolf man that's in San Francisco, but then they're gonna go all the way back to Scotland. It's like, okay, is this even the same creature from there? Are there multiples? That's where I was kind of like scratching my head, like, okay, how are they going to resolve this? How's this going to transition? But yeah, they get over there, and so wait a minute, so this was on like summer break or something, right? Because like the kid couldn't have been gone for that long from school. I would imagine.
Yeah, like it does look like it's summer. So they I think even mentioned like, oh, we can get back by 4th of July or something, just as a like a little marker, I guess. But yeah, so they end up flying to Scotland, and they end up on one of those like bus tours through the Highlands type of thing. So with all the different people on this bus, you're like, oh, okay, so this will up the body count basically.
Yeah, yeah, for sure, for sure. And but then so they're going around, and we finally get to learn a little bit more about this Wolfman creature, because then we get a flashback that honestly I think the flashback was a little bit ill-timed. It just kind of seemed like out of the blue and out of nowhere. Like 1 minute we're on the bus, the next minute we're back in like the 1800s. I was like, okay, that was a choice, because all of a sudden we're in that like Victorian era of the UK. The dress, everything that you could tell, right from there, right? Because like the Van Helsing era, very evocative
Yeah,
of
it's
like
like late 19th
that.
century, yeah.
Yeah, so we got that kind of steampunk ass, like a lot of the top hats, people walking with the canes, all that sort of stuff. And yeah, and we see a different take on how somebody gets turned into a wolf man. What did you take on this deviation from how it normally is? Because isn't it like you usually get bit by like a werewolf and you turn into a wolf man? Like, how
Yeah,
is that
like
usually the lore?
yeah, like usually it's like you get bitten by a werewolf, and here they really make a point to show you that it really is all about the teeth, because in this flashback you see this top hat salesman, but what customers don't know is that this particular top hat, the inside of it is like lined with a circle of sharp werewolf teeth that protrude outward, so that when you put it on, it's like you're basically bitten like into your forehead and stuff. And that's how you become one in this universe, apparently.
I thought that was a choice. I'm like, this is one of the more bizarre things I've seen. And up until now, I was like, oh, this is like a really good, like really like grounded in realism for the most part. I mean, we're dealing with a fantastical creature like a wolf man. But I'm
Yeah.
like, okay, now in Act Two, that's what I was saying before. I'm like, Act Two was pretty good. This got my attention. I don't know, like in Act Two, like it definitely ramped up. I don't know if this was what I would ever expect this movie to go in for sure. I don't think you could have asked anybody to go in this direction. And
Yeah.
this guy, he was, yeah, it was like he took a bite out of an apple, and then it just like he put the hat on, just like screamed in agony, and then it was a good transformation. I gotta give it that, like, with the way the practical effects are, but they synergized it with good computer generation, so CGI, so it looked really, really good. It was a bit unsettling, just like yeah, I had mentioned with the American Werewolf in London sequence, where I was all practical effects. Definitely evoked that, so definitely a nice little nod to that. Um, so yeah, basically he puts his hat on, he turns into a werewolf, and then the hat pops off of his head because his head contorts and turns into that different, not feline, but whatever the technical term, a canine, a kind of canine sort of skull. So the hat
Yeah.
comes off, and then like the last sequence here, you see like a random passerby go and pick up the hat and then walk away. And that's kind of like insinuated that, oh, that person's probably going to put on a hat, hence will also turn into Wolfman. And then that actually gives like me the idea of like, oh, so there is a lot of people throughout time that are that are Wolfmans, because this thing's so easy to transmit, to turn into one. It's putting on a hat and you turn into one, essentially.
Yeah, it's
So
like
I
a
was like,
secret
okay.
society type of thing, which I think we're so used to with vampires. So it was so interesting to see it with werewolves this time around. And of course, before the flashback ends, we see the top hat salesman, like, he smiles about this with his mouth open, and we see that all of his teeth are gone. So it's like, whoa, okay, so is this his way of like being rid of his curse? Like, did he have to remove all of his own teeth and then pass it on to someone else? Is that how this lore works? Like, if anything, this movie got me thinking while it was happening.
Oh yeah. I mean, you talk about the societies of the vampires, and so many tales of like somebody becoming like a shepherd for the other person to learn the ways of what they have to do with the blood and all that sort of thing. With the Wolfman, it was kind of cool because we get to see two Wolfman working together, like at that one point, trying to figure out like one was the older, showing the younger one like, okay, when the full moon is out, that is when it is our time. We don't have control of our bodies, and we are forced to just feed on any human being, specifically humans. We can't be satisfied from like rabbit blood or chicken blood. It's got to be human blood, and not just blood, but like you eat everything. Like you got that's the only way. If you do not do that, you fade away and you die. You're that's the only way. Once you're like this, you're one of us. But you have intense power, and you also have immortality, um to be able to live, just like a vampire in a way. So it's very similar to vampires, except yeah, you have that once a month full moon where you have no control and you actually have no memory either. It's just stuff happens. You kind of wake up just like a lot of these other werewolf movies. You wake up and that's that. So again, like Act Two, it really kind of went on for a bit because I'm like, oh my gosh, there's like so much exposition in this flashback that kind of came out of nowhere. And then when we
Yeah.
finally go back to like Blake and the family, I'm like, oh yeah, this was the movie before this. It almost felt like two different movies because you're looking at the sets of like this old London of where the secret society is where Wolfman are, and then you're suddenly back in the Scotland Highlands, and it's like, okay, we're on this bus. Who's next? Which one of these like no name characters on this bus are gonna die first, kind of thing.
Yeah. And at some point, they kind of do a count of like, is everyone on here? Yeah, I think so. And the bus drives away, and we sort of, the camera zooms out to show like someone's uh someone's body, and like we kind of see like the colon dangling out, and there's like a huge gash in their torso, and so it's like, okay, nobody is safe right now, and there's something stalking them right now. We even get these point of view shots of like a werewolf like running through the highlands, like out in the wild.
Yeah, yeah, and yeah, you got a couple shots, and that was another thing, right? We've finally seen the design. It took us about halfway through the movie, which is fine. Like again, I like to have just like in the original Alien movie, I like to see that suspense that is built up by you're almost more scared of the creature just because the mystery of what it looks like in your imagination trying to like piece it together. So seeing that it was like, oh wow. Very, very tall, like 9 to 10 feet tall. Like these are, I'll say they're almost like the size of a grizzly bear. Definitely a lot leaner with like a long tail. But man, that snout, that feline, the kind of canine structure of the skull, absolutely terrifying. Different fur patterns. You had the one that we seen in a flashback that was still around. It was that gray color, and there was the one that was more like the brownish color. So it's like, oh my gosh, like these guys, they're living for 200 plus years at this point, and we just don't really know like anything about them yet. Like this society is just only known of by like ghost stories, and then they've been under wraps for so long. But the story suddenly like turns into more of a survival story, right? It goes out with exploration, like this family, Blake and his family, they're going out there to just get more information from the locals. But unfortunately, they can't even get that point. They can't even get the secondhand information. They're thrust into the conflict themselves, and they're going to have to get this information personally, which is exactly what they don't want to do is put themselves in danger. They could have stayed safe in San Francisco. This is a bad choice on their end because now they're running for their lives. They come across this circus tent, and it's like, okay, this is indoors. There's gonna be people here. We can get there. Turns out no one's there, and it's just an empty circus tent. And they hear the howling from the outside. This is moment of terror. It reminds me of like Jurassic Park or something with like characters hiding and just trying to. That's all they can do. There's nothing stopping these creatures. They're too overpowering. They don't even know their weakness yet. But what'd you think about this moment when it suddenly dawns on them that it's like, okay, this is survival now.
Yeah, they really went up to 11, like, and we see the shadows of the werewolves, like, while they're inside of the tent, we see their shadows of the werewolves that are outside. So they kind of still haven't seen these things firsthand, but they have an inkling that there's something out there. But you also get the sense that they kind of can't believe that there's something that supernatural out there. So they're kind of coming to grips with like, is this real? Is this really happening? And of course, they're trying to protect the daughter and making sure that Ginger is fine. But you also have like, the people on the bus, some of them have been picked off and some are kind of tagging along with this family, but like not having their wits about and panicking. And it's like, man, some of these survivors are gonna get each other killed if they don't get it together.
Yeah, and there's a moment here where they're like, okay, they've been there, and it's like they feel like the danger has passed because the howling has suddenly ceased, and it's been a while. So somebody has to stay watch, have watch for the night because they something happened to the bus, and it had to have been one of the Wolfmen. There's been some like one of the wires was cut, so they can't even start the freaking bus. They're in the middle of nowhere. No one's around. For whatever reason, the circus tent, which is there, and all the help is gone because I guess they went to like the nearby village to get food and dinner and stuff like that. So they have, and this is where it really reminds me of like the Lost World Jurassic Park because you have this long grass and it's all surrounding the circus, and You got the guy that's watching out there watching as other people are trying to get some sleep. And yeah, and you get this really nice shot from like a drone shot, like from looking down at the ground from about 50 feet up, and you see like the two different wolfmen like coming from different directions, like crawling on the ground, and you're seeing like the high tall grass like moving. Um and then they both like intersect and get the guy and just rip him to shreds, and he starts yelling, and it just goes from there. And I just love that cinematography of like you see that top angle and you see that grass moving, and it's like, oh, this is not gonna end well for this poor guy. And then it's like, okay, we are not out of the woods yet. And yeah, from there it's more or less a battle of survival at that point. We still the hard part about these creatures is they're very stealthy. For their size at like 9 feet tall, they get down on their hind legs and they can get really close to the ground and be super quiet. Like they are apex predators. They are like the epitome of like the absolute killing machine. Um, but the good thing is the characters are in the circus. So you have a lot of these unorthodox type weapons that are just for show, obviously, but are actually real. And apparently there was like a ninja part of segment of this circus because you actually get to see, which is not something you see in a lot of movies, but it's a kasurigama, which is basically this chain that is attached to like a little spike ball in the end that's weighted. Then you have like a sickle type blade on the other end. So the idea is like ninjas in like the 16th century Japan would be spinning the chain around to hit somebody with like the big ball, and then they could also come in like with a dagger with the other end and like stab. So, and this thing happened to be made of course, we all know this, of silver. So I was like, oh, that was really convenient, wasn't it? That we just have one of these weapons that could do like area control. And one of these people that was part of the bus was like, oh, I just happen to be really good at using this weapon because I just have one. I just own one. I'm a big ninja fanatic. I love watching all these old movies. I just wanted to play around one day and I got pretty good with using it. So here you have this guy.
Yeah, and this was like this comic relief character who was part of the group for and like chiming in now and then. And so it's like, oh, okay, so they're doing that. They're making this like movie fanatic guy with who's been doing the jokes, like they're giving him the ninja weapon. That sounds like a good idea.
Yeah, yeah. So he's like, everybody get away. Everybody clear out of the way. I've only used this thing maybe like 3 times, and he's spinning it, and it's like hitting the supports of the circus. And in fact, it's actually like he loses control, and it like starts slashing at the sides of the tent, and it's like, oh crap, like there goes our shelter. This guy's single-handedly taking this place down. But he literally with luck manages to like just barely graze like the foot of one of the werewolves that was like right on the outside of the tent stalking them. And then it was a really cool image because that silver when it makes contact, when it cuts into the flesh of the wolfman, it literally just like you see that area that's affected like start to disintegrate, almost like the Thanos snap in a way. Until you just say like things just start hitting like dust, and it just keeps working its way up to like the entire body, and then he basically just becomes like dust. And I was like, okay, so you just have to graze these things, and it completely kills them. That's good to know.
Yeah.
So what did you think about the solution that they just happened upon there?
Yeah, it felt very convenient, but I think I was also like kind of distracted by like this very subtle moment where Blake, when they find the weapon, he picks it up and then Charlotte feels the silver part and she's like, ow, and is like I remember thinking to myself, okay, they put that in there for a reason, right? And so we eventually come to find out that she has been infected somehow. But it kind of comes in handy when these like werewolves try to take the daughter. And so basically her maternal instincts kick in and she's like, get the away from my daughter. And she like just goes at these werewolves. And it truly is like a horrific monster fight. And they try to get the weapon thing in there too, but Blake is like, try not to hit my wife. And it's like this whole chaotic thing that happens here.
Yeah, I know. It's and I felt really for the daughter because this entire time, she's only like 12 years old, and it's like the trauma that this poor girl is going
Yeah.
through, or it's just like she's just trembling with her knees into her chest, like squatting on the ground, just like, make it go away, please, daddy, make it go away. And it's just like, oh God, like this is poor girl. Like, so that's
Yeah.
going on as all this chaos is happening. It's like, okay, this is crazy. This is crazy.
Yeah, during this whole thing, they even cut in a flashback to like, I guess when she was a few years younger and was like telling her parents she's scared that there's a monster under her bed, and we see them trying to console her. So we get this moment of like, her parents are making this promise that they'll protect her from anything, and then we cut back to the present moment. And it's like they're literally in this situation, and are they gonna be able to fulfill the promise? Like it really did have me on the edge of my seat, I gotta admit.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. So the the apex predator is around, and he's the only there's two attacking wolfmen. They are able to, there's about, including the family of three, there's about maybe like five other people at that point, because there were people that were smart and they decided, let's just make a run for it. So there's about like 10 other people from that bus that just started running in one direction. Like, all right, we have a better chance of just running away from the chaos than just trying to stay here. So yeah, while it was a packed bus, that's why there was only a couple people left, but makes sense in that situation. Um, but like they are able, like they want to be able to figure out what the heck these things are. And it's Blake's idea as the writer. He's like, we got to figure out more about these things. Why do we not know their existence? We have to capture one. We gotta figure this. We gotta capture it. So they go through this elaborate scheme of like there's these different hooks and whatnot. Again, they had an eclectic amount of just random weapons and different things, trapeze, obviously, but like a bunch of like medieval kind of style stuff for like little like duels and stuff they would have at this circus. So they're able to kind of lure in the werewolf with an apple. Like somebody had an apple, and it was a call back to the flashback. They threw this apple, and for whatever reason, it went for the apple. I don't know what the it's like the Achilles heel to these things. They like the
Yeah,
shiny red apples.
yeah, it's like, is there a bit of werewolf lore I'm just not aware of, where apples are each part of it? Like, I kind of didn't get this part.
Yeah. So then they threw this apple. Everybody was ready, and they all like used these weapons and like stabbed it all at once, just regular, not net steel. And then they were able to kind of with enough safety, they were able to like not incapacitate in a way of knocking it out, but they were able to immobilize all of its limbs. Um, and then that is when Blake is able to like interrogate this creature, and they find out like it actually can speak English in its Wolfman form. Um, so that is when he decides, okay, I'm making all of these notes for my book. We're gonna figure out where they came from, their lineage, all this sort of thing. And it kind of like breezes over that moment. like it goes really quick. Like it kind of fades to black. You don't know really what's happening. Um, and then all of a sudden they're like back in San Francisco, and it's like 1 year later or something like that. And there you have the finished book, The Legend of the Wolfman, and it's gonna be published, and then it's like right at the end there, you get this kind of the family's all like they're all back to normal, right? They're the girls going back to school, the wife is happy, but you could tell like Blake is still like a little bit nervous or something about him that's just a little bit shaken still to this day. Um, and it's this crazy moment where like there is like the top hat that is like at at the doorstep of like when he hears the doorbell and there's like something he felt it before it happened, like something was coming, he could feel it, and there's that top hat on a doorstep, and it's like underneath his published book or something, and then it's like that's when it cuts to black and it's like, oh, I guess there's gonna be a sequel now. Oh man, like what did he talk, and that's where it's like this moment, like what did he actually say to the Wolfman? Like it cut to black, like what were they discussing at that moment that could
Yeah,
have led to this conclusion? Like, oh, is he going to be one of them now? Like, what's happening here? And that went off the rails a little bit, I think, but it's to their interpretation.
yeah, and they kind of like glossed over like, is his wife okay now? Like, is she cured or something? Like, and it didn't even end there. Like, if there was the last scene, like after the credits, we kind of see like the Golden Gate Bridge, but as it zooms out, we see that in the water, there's like what I guess appears to be the Loch Ness monster rising out of the water. So it's like, how the hell did it get there?
Yeah, yeah. So again, I'm kind of like going, you know, this A-list actor Ryan Gosling signing up for this. It started off very promising, but then I'm realizing like, is this just a paycheck for him at this point? Like, what did he see in this exactly? I could see the money signs though, because this could be a franchise, as we experienced at the end there. It could be a franchise, so that's what he's signing on for. But still, I was like, all right, this definitely seemed a bit all over the place.
Yeah, and the reception was kind of all over the place too. So it's like, I don't know, was it worth it for him? Were the dollar signs that big? Like, I don't know. But hey, he's in Star Wars now, so I guess that like paid off in the end or something. I
Yeah,
don't know.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So he's everywhere now. He's everywhere now. But overall, there are good moments in this movie. I think the beginning was very strong because it did lead off with a lot of good, as we said, good like familial drama between the wife and the child, and just this idea of like I think they depicted him as the writer very good, like having to juggle all this real life stuff, but then this, and then just realizing like where's my path forward, trying to figure that out as we all get stuck in life from here on there. So I thought that was good, but then in a flashback, I think that they did a really good job with that segment where it really did feel a lot like the Nosferatu movie that came out earlier in the year, where it was like or actually at the end of last year, I think it came out, where yeah, where it was all like that German kind of part of the world dealing with Nosferatu, and it really dived deep into the architecture, the costumes, and all that sort of stuff. Very authentic. I got the same vibe. I was like, oh, this kind of reminds me of that movie because they're doing such a good job with detail. So that was another shining moment. But yeah, the third act, it really became kind of like, oh, this is really convenient, like you said.
Yeah. And Nosferatu, like I thought the movie was pretty loud, but I do think it had a lot going for it aesthetically. So I think this is a similar case for me where like the movie has some things going for it, but other things could have been better. So like I don't know. Was there anything else you want to get into before we get into final thoughts and scores?
Yeah, I mean, as far as just the idea of that other creature, like they never even I get like the guy in San Francisco, there's the Wolfman, the griddle cook that got pulled down into the sewer. Like, did they just never address that again? I mean, I guess when they were back in San Francisco, there was a hat that was left at his door. So I guess that would kind of imply that that Wolfman might have left that there for him. Now that I'm talking it out loud, I think that was the case. But I was wondering the whole movie, like, we are now away from San Francisco. What was the point of that whole sequence? So I don't know if you
Yeah.
felt the same way.
Yeah, it's one of those things where like you might think of connections later, but it's like, shouldn't it have been easier to come to those connections while actually watching the movie? So I feel like it wasn't as neat and tidy as it could have been. Like it kind of felt like they were throwing in these mysteries just for the hell of it, just to get people curious and talking on Reddit and stuff. But it's like I kind of just want a movie to be a be its thing and stand well as like a story on its own.
Yeah, yeah, I agree.
All right. So what are your final thoughts, score out of 10, and unit of measurement for that score for this Wolfman movie?
Yeah, so overall, I thought the Wolfman movie had really good acting from especially Ryan Gosling and the family themselves. Um, it felt like the tonality of it was a little bit off. Like you have a lot of that heavier drama in the beginning, then you have like some really weird comedic stuff that almost remind me of straight out of the 28 years later movie that came out where like the ending was like kind of like off kilter at the end there with the same kind
Uh,
of vibe actually. Now that I think about it, it was like the same kind of vibe where it's like, oh, that tonality was a little bit off. um but I think the attention to detail and costuming, and again, as I mentioned, like the transformation, the look of the Wolfman was horrifying, terrifying. Like they'll haunt me in my dreams, give me nightmares. um but I would have to give this one 6.5 apples out of 10.
okay.
Left
Yeah.
more to be desired.
Yeah, I think I'm there with you. Like it had some good stuff going for it in terms of the look of these werewolves. But and like there were like some really scary, spooky vibes that were pretty cool, but like the tone like is really clunky at times, and so it's just yeah, this could have been ironed out a bit more. They could have let it cook a little longer. So I'd give it 6.5 out of 10 Loch Ness monsters.
There we go. Coming back to it. Coming back to it. Yeah.
Yeah.
So we'll see. We get some movie franchises that have the worst critical scores, but people come out in droves to see them, and they'll get the sequels until the end of eternity there. So we'll see about that. But like you said, hopefully they let it cook a little bit longer. There's been a lot of situations where, the first movie is not so great, the sequel is even better. So I'm hoping for that situation here.
Yeah. I mean, anything could happen at this point. But Uh, but yeah, I guess that'll do it. Thanks for joining me again. Where can people find you online, Starrapter?
Yeah, it was a pleasure as always. Love doing these. It's always just good to talk about these movies we've seen, and because I feel like sometimes like I need to have that talking session to talk my feelings out.
Yeah,
So
therapy session.
yeah, therapy session, if you will. So
Yeah.
appreciate that. Um, yeah, you can find me primarily. My main source of stuff is on YouTube, youtube.com/Starrapter. I do a podcast a couple times a month called Outer Room Transmission, where we keep up to speed with the latest in the Star Wars community out there and news and reviews and whatnot. And you can also find me talking every day over usually on Twitter, twitter.com slash Starrapter, where you're gonna find me talking about more movies, talking about video games, skateboarding, stuff like that. So there you go.
All right. So go ahead and follow him at those links. Uh, and you can find links in the show notes and such. So that'll do it for this episode. And I'll be continuing the spooky season in another 2 weeks from whenever this comes out. So without further delay, have a good day.
All right, this is Steven in the edit. And just a side note, Starrapter did mention The Invisible Man coming out in the early 2000s. I think he might have meant Hollow Man, but yeah, I don't know. Yeah. I haven't seen the film, so I don't know how similar it is, but I've heard the premise of it, so it might be something similar. But anyway, you can email delayedreplaypodcast@gmail.com. Let us know your thoughts on the rules of becoming a werewolf. What are your favorites? And you can also find me at the socials listed in the show notes, and go to stevenshinder.com for info on my standalones and stepping stones novels. You can also find me on Yes Shift, a podcast I do with my dad, where we talk about prog rock and music and Yes related stuff. We actually just did a tribute to John Lodge, who just passed away, a very legendary musician. And we also have some other stuff in line on our schedule. And also check out Drum Talk TV and Drum Talk TV Brilliance. So now my other self from that other universe will talk about what he's been watching. So without further delay, here's my other self. Hey everyone, so before I talk about what I'm watching, just want to remind everyone about the Intergalactic Peace Coalition podcast. There's a new episode out about Jurassic World Rebirth for like 3/4 of it, and then we talk about Jurassic World Chaos Theory for a bit. The whole discussion was like, it came out to be a 3 hours and 15-minute episode. It was really fun. It was a roundtable discussion, and Starrapter was one of the other people there, so there you go. Go check that out. And also check out my YouTube channel, Steven Shinder Reviews in video form. Recently put a couple videos on there. One of them is titled Prequels to Planet of the Apes, how it could all fit theoretically. Now, I see the reboot films and the classic films as two separate entities, separate universes, but because of quotes I've heard here and there where people say or suggest that the newer films could be prequels, I decided to play devil's advocate and talk about what would have to happen in order to retcon them as prequels. It would sort of involve some floating timeline and comic book time type stuff. And I also put up a video basically commemorating 30 years of Gumby the movie, of all things. So I think I titled it Gumby the Movie 30 Years, 30 Minutes or something. So yeah, go ahead and check that out. And I have another video that I plan on putting out, which will probably drop the same day as the next episode of Delayed Replay. Now, as for what I've been watching, I've been going through Jackie Chan Adventures here and there, been rewatching that show. Finally tried to get further into the Thunderbirds TV show. Whenever I've tried watching the show, I keep not getting very far, but I'm now 14, 15, 16 episodes into it or something. I have to go back and check. And it's kind of tough for me to feel as into it. I'm kind of wondering if this is one of those shows where people enjoy how it was made, how it was constructed. But when it comes to Jerry Anderson's shows, I think I'm more of a UFO and Space 1999 person. So I guess we'll see how long it takes for me to get through this show and if I bother with the other Super Mario Nation shows. But in terms of new stuff, I've watched Bring Her Back, the horror movie which came out, I think, earlier this year, and I thought it was fine. There were some unsettling moments. It didn't quite scare me or feel as compelling to me as some other horror movies I've watched. And I watched the other film from that same team that came out, I think, a couple years ago, within the last couple years, Talk to Me. I thought that had some interesting vibes to it too. The ending felt abrupt though, and the choice of music for the credits felt very jarring. So I think I slightly prefer Bring Her Back. And I also watched The Woman in Cabin 10. That one is a Netflix movie. They released it on October 10th, so 10/10, you know. So while the other movies, Bring Her Back and Talk to Me, were like 7 out of 10 for me, I would say that The Woman in Cabin 10 is more like a 6 out of 10 to me. It kind of feels like the mystery, the reveal happens earlier than you would think, and then I don't know, parts of it feel kind of rushed, although there are some interesting acting moments, but yeah, definitely could have been better. Can check my letterboxd for anything else I may have reviewed, movie wise or miniseries wise, anyway. Apparently, my review of The Woman in Cabin 10 has the most likes that any letterboxd review I've ever made. It was basically just, do I need to watch The Woman in Cabin 1, 2, 3, but I wrote out the whole titles in order to understand The Woman in Cabin 10, or to understand this movie, or whatever. So, yeah, anyway, also I finished Peacemaker Season 2. The penultimate episode was definitely the best one, because we were past the reveal that people had already guessed, and it was, the aftermath of that was done so well. It got really emotional. And then the finale, I guess the finale was fine. It definitely leaves things in a place that sort of hints at uh, potentially the future of the DCU, so people can speculate away after watching that finale. But yeah, overall, the pacing was kind of whack. I guess it was okay overall as a show. Like, most of it felt like a 6 to me, and then the penultimate episode was maybe an 8, a finale maybe I don't know, maybe a 7, 7.5. I could go up on it maybe, but um yeah, I don't know, I get the vibe that people enjoy this show more than I do. Same with Alien Earth. But yeah, I guess that's all the updates from me for now anyway. The next delayed replay episode coming out in 2 weeks will be about Keeper, that new horror movie from Osgood Perkins. So without further delay, have a good day.